The Republican Zone is brought to you by Drew Murray, a modern view from the Republican lens, covering local and national news, understanding that one size doesn't fit all when it comes to politics. The Republican Zone airs Wednesday from 1 to 2 p.m. and Saturday from 3 to 4 p.m.
Good afternoon. You're listening to USLA Radio. My name is Drew Murray, and I am the host of the Republican Zone. I am here today with my friend Mark McPhelin, who I met. I say we connected on Facebook probably a month or two ago. No, God, no, it's before COVID. It seems like a month or two ago. It was, I guess, four or 5 months ago, right around, right before you were trying to get signatures and things were going on, and. And then we met, and then just last week, I came down to Kensington to come to a rally that you were part of. And I tell people, I've been to Kensington before, but we met at the North Kensington CDC, and then we walked up to K&A. So I've been to Kensington, driven through it. I've never walked. I guess it was about a mile through Kensington. Yeah. And I will tell you that. Even though I've been to Kensington before, I was not ready for what I saw walking that street. So, why just give background who you are? We're going to talk about safe injection sites today, and how you kind of got involved in Kensington and trying to improve Kensington, to clean it up, to get some of the drugs out of Kensington.
Ooh, it's pretty tough there. But so I live locally in Port Richmond. I do a lot of work in Kensington. I work for a nonprofit called Soldiers Angels, where we work with veterans. It's another aspect that brought me to Kensington. My family's originally from there on my mother's side. My aunt lived in Port Richmond her entire life, so I moved back down in 2016, back to Port Richmond, and stayed active in the community. I had rehabs in the area that were actually in Kensington, so I ran into a lot of problems with that. Just being my neighborhood overall with the crime rate and what actually happens every day, following through Port Richmond all the way up into Kensington. And when you get to see that every day, it kind of changes, your viewpoint on the neighborhood, what needs to be done. And obviously it's more like, people need to step up in the neighborhood and start handling some of the things that aren't being taken care of via, the representatives, the city council, and city in general. So.
And I said I walked that mile, and I was stunned. I mean, there's trash on every single block. At every corner, there's mounds of trash. It's like the city. It's like the city doesn't pick up trash there.
They don't care. Period.
Yeah, they don't care. Mixed in with this trash is not surprisingly you can see needles. Literally at every block you could see. Oh yeah. I would say 5 to 10 needles on every block, just walking down.
I'd say that's
the block, and that might be low. Yeah. And unfortunately, you see a lot of people under the cycle of addiction. A few people every block, and you also see the people who are enabling them and who are selling drugs to them.
Yes, definitely.
Literally every block. I mean, every block
right out in the open.
Not, and I don't blame the police officers, because
there's only so much they can do, and that's the bigger problem. Obviously, they don't get prosecuted for it. That's a big thing with Larry Krasner. That's why the neighborhood, that's why he came out to the rally. But even though we obviously don't like him because of what he does to the neighborhood and what he doesn't do for the neighborhood, obviously that's being the open addiction, the open air market that they have there, and that the fact that people are allowed to deal drugs openly, I mean, obviously is a big factor in the neighborhood. And, that's what we try and get away from. That's what we're trying to prevent. That's where the injection sites come into play, and the legalization of heroin is a big deal for everybody. It's, in Port Richmond, Kensington, and Fishtown neighborhoods.
Sure, and when we were walking to K&A that day, we were walking to a rally. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even sure if it was a rally just to bring people together and say to our elected officials, you got to get out here and help, or if it was an anti-safe injection site rally. Was it a little bit of both?
It's all that involved. It's a cry for help, basically. Obviously, Shannon, who runs the Howard Gates Civic Association, and everybody locally knows how much we've taken over the past few months. Obviously, the riots, the burning down the neighborhood, the pandemic, just the fact that the city neglected 45 days into the pandemic. Nobody saw. There wasn't anyone from the city coming out and helping. There wasn't any water. You couldn't get food to the people that are addicted, and nobody. They deemed these people the most vulnerable, and then never showed up to help them at all. So that was a big deal for us. And then again, you go through the riots, the burning down. And again, we didn't see any official come out. You saw Angel Cruz come out and blame everybody but himself, and it's his district. So there's that aspect of it. So you see what the leadership looks like locally.
And Maria Quinones Sanchez was not there, and that surprised me. I don't know Maria, but I've heard good things about her, and I heard she's very well liked in the community.
In her half of the community.
Okay.
Which is Fair Hill and Juniata, not Kensington.
Not down in Kensington.
Never see her.
Never see her down there.
She goes to the Civic Association meetings. She'll show up for things, but then it's just lip service and never actually does the work in the community. That might be too strong, but I mean, she doesn't make anything noticeable change-wise to the community, especially Kensington.
And when we were talking that day, I said, we were walking, or when we were waiting to walk up, I said, this is a forgotten community. And then I changed it. I said, it's not forgotten. Everyone knows about it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a forgotten community. I say it's an ignored community.
Neglected.
Yeah. There's not a single official in the city of Philadelphia who does not know about Kensington. Now, the way city council is structured, it is within Maria's district.
Correct.
And council members oftentimes do not get involved in areas outside their district. But I tell people, if you walk that mile, you have to feel like you have to be there. I'm running for the 182nd legislative district.
You're miles away.
That's miles away. Yeah. Not that far though. I mean,
it's not a chip shot.
I'm not running that district, but people said, why are you in here? I said, because this is the community that needs us more than any other community.
Yes.
In the city of Philadelphia.
It should be a priority for any elected official, hands down. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I use an analogy, when my mother was alive, someone would say, well, who's your favorite? She would say, well, whoever needs me the most at the time. That's my favorite. So Kensington should be our favorite because they need us. They need all of us. I don't care what district I'm from.
Correct.
If I'm elected or even just as a community leader, as a fellow civic association member or leader, I'm going to be there trying to help Kensington because it is, and it is far from my neighborhood, but it's only about 5 miles. It's not that much. And if the pictures I took that I showed to my wife, I said, you would never believe that I'm taking pictures of a neighborhood that is only 5 miles from Center City. When you look at how clean our neighborhood is versus what is going on there. Plus, you had showed me that the one building or buildings that were completely burnt to the ground during the riots and were businesses.
Yep.
Were open businesses.
Minority-owned businesses.
Minority-owned businesses. And funny, when I saw it burnt down, I assumed, okay, they set fire to buildings that were abandoned.
Nope.
But that wasn't the case. And so since the riots, how many people have you seen? So let's go over who was. You said, as you said, Angel Cruz was there.
Yeah.
Councilman David O was there.
Yes.
Larry Krasner was there. And I'll be honest with you. I give him credit. For he knew what he was walking into. He knew people did not like him there. So I will give him credit for showing up. At least he did that. I didn't agree with anything that he said while he spoke.
Same.
But I give him, I got to give credit where credit is due. And he did show up. And I think, was that it? Was that all the elected officials?
As far as I'm aware, yeah.
Yeah, that's all I saw. And I think that's a shame because they need to be there.
I think every elected official in the city should be there. Just because there's multiple things that are going on in the area. There's multiple problems there. It's becoming a bigger issue. It is the biggest single voter issue in the city of Philadelphia would be safe house injection sites.
Sure.
And the fact that people aren't stepping up and talking about it is, it's really it's a shame for the city because you need to be able to talk about this and people need to be open about it and realistic about what actually goes down in that neighborhood. And, people just shy away from it, especially like, Sanchez. She needs to be more active in the community as a city council member. Angel Cruz has been there for 20 years, and for 20 years he's neglected the area.
And the senator, is that Farnese?
That's Farnese.
Farnese does go up that far?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Senator Farnese?
I didn't even know his name when it was first mentioned to me. So,
is that right?
And that's in Port Richmond. So even with that, actually, when I was talking to Martina, she had told me that I would have to go up against Farnese if I got all the signatures and on the ballot, and I had no idea who he was at all.
Okay.
Even my neighbors, they said that the only time he did something was 12 years ago. He fixed a bathroom at Cohawks Recreation Center, and haven't heard a word since.
And that was it.
Yep, pretty much.
No, that's interesting. That's that's probably right around when he
started.
When he started.
Yeah.
That's when he won the election. So yeah, let's get into safe injection sites a little bit.
Okay.
And you talked about Harrogate Civic Association.
Yeah.
How many? And maybe you don't know this answer. So, how many neighborhood associations? How many RCOs are kind of either part of Kensington or overlap or even border?
The only one you're going to know is Harrogate.
And Harrogate's the number one.
ProPac is Port Richmond on the other side, and then we work with the Port Richmond Neighborhood Association. That's what I'm involved in. And then, I mean, outside of that, the only one you're ever going to hear about over there is Harrogate. And I mean, like, again, they've been the most vocal. That's why Shannon stepped up and had the rally in the first place. But outside of that, there's a lot of disconnect between the community. Obviously, there's various reasons for that. The Kensington community itself is basically the only one's going to speak up is Harrogate. So,
and did Safe House? They actually did go to Harrogate Civic.
They did
probably. I would even maybe numerous times when they were trying. Just once. Just once.
Yeah.
And were you at that meeting by any chance, or?
I was late to it. By the time I got there, I talked to a handful of people that were already inside. I tried to get there. I mean, so we heard there was a lot of reporters there, or journalists, and then we heard that from what the people in the Safe House community and harm reduction community had told us is that they were a bunch of actors in there and not actually community members. So I thought that was pretty laughable because everybody that was there was part of the Civic Association.
Sure.
But the rumor that they had spread was there were actors there, paid actors. So
meaning there were a lot of people there who were opposed to the safe injection site.
Yeah.
And the Safe House people and the harm reduction
people
said that it wasn't really people from the community.
Yeah. So here's the thing: is that you didn't introduce yourself to the community. You should show up and basically you're going to tell everybody what they're going to be doing. And they ran a mock site a little bit before that, and never really engaged at all in the community. So they did have the Civic Association down there, and they went down to meet with them. And the people from Safe House are very off-putting. They're from the people that I've talked to that have dealt with them directly. They said that they're unwilling to change their ways. They've never engaged in the community, and that was my biggest thing when it came down to the pandemic, is that they were never out in the community. You can't,
Safe House wasn't.
Correct. You can't sit there and say that you're all about the community and you're about the most vulnerable people, and then in the middle of an actual pandemic, you don't show up at all for them. I think that's a big.
At their most vulnerable time.
Yeah, I think that's a big sign of what they're about. And it's not about injection sites, or not. It's not about the the people that are struggling. It's about the money and the business that they're trying to run.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when I come back with Mark, we're going to continue our discussion on safe injection sites. You're listening to USLA Radio and the Republican Zone.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Welcome back. You're listening to Usula Radio and the Republican Zone. My name is Drew Murray, and I am the host, talking to my friend Mark McPhelin, and we are currently talking about, we're talking about Kensington overall, and specifically now we're kind of delving in a little bit more to safe injection sites, which last year for my city council run, it was one of the biggest things everyone wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
It was, I called it the 3 S's. It was the safe injection sites, the soda tax, and Sanctuary City. Those were the 3 things everyone wanted to talk about, Republican, Democrat, and honestly, I would say number 1 were safe injection sites, no matter where I was in the city as well. I mean,
you have to.
Because, even if Kensington was the target for the first, we all knew that if it was successful in Kensington, meaning successful in opening it, not successful in what they do,
correct,
that it would go in other areas of the city. And I remember actually having a conversation with someone in my neighborhood. I live in Logan Square, in Center City, and this woman was like, "I fully support safe injection sites. And their harm reduction measures." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Look, I understand what the harm reduction is. I get it.
Yeah.
I think their hearts are for the most part in the right places." But I said, no community is going to want this in their neighborhood. And I said, and I said to this woman, I said, "Look, are you ready when it comes to Logan Square?" I said, because, and I think it's interesting. I said it's going to be Kensington first, South Philadelphia second, and Center City, specifically, I think Logan Square third, because we have the Parkway, and there are a lot of people who are under the cycle addiction who are around the Parkway. And I said, we're going to be third. And she said, that we can't have that. There's children in our neighborhood. We can never have a safe injection site in our neighborhood.
Exactly.
I said, and I looked at her, I said, do you realize how that sounds? Do you realize that Kensington has a lot of children as well?
Yeah, and you just made your children more valuable than the Kensington
That's exactly, I mean, that's what I said to her. And I didn't say that. I said, do you realize how that sounds? I said, it's coming. It's coming to our neighborhood. So if you oppose them for our community, you would better oppose them for Kensington too.
So here's how I got started with this, is that I was working in Kensington. It's a Friday afternoon, and we see a woman overdose on the side of McPherson Square. And there's kids in their school uniforms walking up, and they stop because they know something's wrong, and then they step and walk over her and just keep on going. Now, we got out of our work truck, and we had a can of Narcan, and we revived her back to life. But to think about a bunch of kids that had to, one, not only identify that there was someone that was, in need of help, and chose, one, they already knew what it was, and they walked past it anyway, because they were probably told at some point just to, walk away from it. And this is someone's life that we're talking about, and there's so many different things that you figure out right then and there when you see that, like the value of life, what it actually means, what it means in that neighborhood, and what they are subjected to every day of their lives, especially at a young age. And that's the point where I was just like, I can't watch this anymore. Being as close that I am, knowing as much as I know about the neighborhood, and having to see this firsthand for months at that, probably longer than that, but I mean directly for months at the time, considering I had 2 properties in the area that we were rehabbing. And it was just like, it's definitely a breaking point. Like you just said, you're putting a value on someone's life because you want it in certain areas, but not in the others. There's the counterpart to where people walk out of their house and they're subjected to that in Kensington. They see that all day long. And
it's become normal. I mean, you said that, I think you said little girls just stepped over the person. And that sounds horrible. But you're right. They were probably told, it could be dangerous if as a young child you get involved and try to help someone. So just ignore it, and the fact, it's normal to them to walk down the street and to walk around someone who maybe has overdosed, to step over someone. I mean, it sounds heartless, but it's everyday life to them at this point.
Yep.
It numbs them to the point where it normalizes it.
So that's my biggest thing with that, is that when you're going through this, this often, and you see this kind of life, and then you're subjected to that from the time that you grew up, what kind of life are you going to lead following that? And that's where, if we have one in Kensington, then we open up in South Philly, then we open up, say, Logan Square will be another one, and they want to open 18 of these. Now you're subjecting everybody in the city to see this at all times, because it will happen. If the more that you open these up, the more people that are going to come to those sites supposedly. I mean, obviously, we've heard all day long from the people that are in the area that already shoot now that they'll never even walk through the doors because there's no point for them. By the time they buy their drugs, they're shooting up on the sidewalk anyway. They won't even get to there. So there's that aspect of it. But then there's also the point that if you do open it up in a different neighborhood, you are introducing heroin to people that might not already know about it or want to take it, but they see it now, and you're normalizing that. You're
Sure.
So I mean, that's another thing from my perspective is that why introduce people that have no business doing that? Why bring that into their lives when it's unneeded?
Absolutely. And I guess I should say, and people have listened to my show before, or anybody who followed my city council race, I am opposed to safe injection sites. That does not mean I'm not empathetic to those who are under the cycle addiction. In fact, I call it a disease.
Yeah.
And I think we need to help these people. I don't think safe injection sites help people. I think they enable drug users. And as you said, it normalizes drug use. It tells them, okay, they're telling me it is okay to go in here and it is okay for me to do this drug. And they are going to save me at this specific time. But you're still killing yourself every time you inject that drug into your body. And, so I tell people I'm opposed for two reasons. Number one, I don't think it helps people who are under the cycle of addiction. And you can never tell me that it is good for a community because so it's I'm empathetic to those who are addicted to drugs, but it's also I'm also looking, I'm also being selfish. I'm looking at communities, kind of looking, saying, okay,
That's
if
not
this was in
selfish.
my community,
That's realistic.
would I want it? Would I want people doing drugs and then leaving because they don't, they're not requiring anybody to stay there until the drug has gotten through their system.
Yeah.
And what's going to happen? And you said it, a minute ago, that the people aren't going to go into the location because as soon as they get their drug, they're shooting it up within a couple minutes.
Yep.
So what happens if you do open a safe injection site? Those drug dealers are going to be right outside those injection sites.
Which they already are.
Which
I mean, as far as McPherson Park, as far as Kensington Avenue, it's already right out in the open. So what do you need the injection site for at all?
It's supply and demand. They're going to go and literally walking down the street for that mile. It was clear who was doing the drugs and who was dealing the drugs.
Definitely.
And it was scary. I mean, I went to school at St. Joe's Prep, 17th and Girard, and I've never had a problem walking around the city of Philadelphia. I've never been scared. And I'll be honest with you, when we were getting ready to leave, I'm like, I got to go, Mark. I got to go. I got to go. And I was nervous. I was like, I don't know if I should walk by them myself.
I didn't want you to walk by yourself.
Because there were drug dealers there, and
you're a target. Yeah. You're walking around.
I have my campaign button on. Yeah. I would have been a target. And what I feared was the drug dealers coming to think this is a guy coming to our neighborhood trying to change something.
Yeah.
Trying to help.
Yep.
And so I got to stop that person from helping, or else I lose my business.
So if you remember when we'd walked through with the whole camera crew, there was 5 guys on the left of us, 5 guys on the right of us, and the gentleman that started talking to us had a gun on his hip. Leah, who was with us from Vice Magazine, she's like, "Did you know that guy?" I was like, "I'm trying not to get shot." And she's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Don't turn around." I said, "But he's got a gun right on his waist." And I was like, "And trust me, they don't like us. That's 100% clear."
Sure.
I mean, you saw from the second we got to the first corner, the 20 people on the left-hand side were screaming at us the second we turned the corner. So there's that aspect of it.
Yeah, asking where you're from.
Yeah.
Saying, are you from here?
Yeah, and then I'd live 8 blocks down, and to me or to them, I'm still not from there.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm active in the community all the time, and they still see that. So before I had a beard, I had longer hair because it would help me fit in more and acclimate more to the neighborhood. If I have shorter hair and I'm shaved, I stick out like a sore thumb down there. So I know it's not the easiest way to explain it, but it's true. Like I'm more accepted if I look more rugged or like I'm generally from the area like that. So that's like you do have to protect yourself in that aspect, and it's a shame, but it's reality. Like the cops obviously stick out like a thumb out there. They don't want them there. They tell you all the time they don't need them, but they got to be there because you have the camp encampments, you have all the crime, you have open crime, not even just regular crime. Like it is consistent. They see somebody from out of the neighborhood, they will get robbed. That's a given. Like again, they had no idea what they're walking into, and when we walked out of there and I had talked to Leah afterwards, she's like, I've never seen anything like in my life. And she's like, and I live in New York. Yeah. I was like, because I tried to explain to her before. I said, this is nothing. You'll never see anything like this ever again. And my thing is, when I lived out in California, when we lived towards Tijuana, I had actually gotten to see some of cartel country for a little bit with one of the guys I lived out there with. And it's very on par for what that neighborhood looks like. And that's the craziest thing in the world is to even say, or at least for me, because, like, you're so close to it.
Sure.
And like I talked about before, was the sex trafficking, the open air drug market. You have dealers that can't be arrested. They can just literally deal in front of cops all day long, and they're never cited. They're never charged. They don't even bother.
Well, especially during the pandemic, because
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Outlaw and our DA announced that they're not going to prosecute and they're not going to arrest.
Yep.
Whether it's prostitution or it's drug dealing. And I'll be honest with you, I understand why they did that. It was going to be a challenge putting people in jail. It's going to be a challenge having court cases. Everything was a challenge. But that's one of those things.
Why announce
you implement it? You don't announce it.
Yeah.
you don't,
especially to the public
Yeah.
in a press conference or a paper.
Exactly.
I mean,
you told the drug dealers and the prostitutes and even where I say prostitutes, sex trafficking, that you're not going to be looking out for them.
Yeah.
And you could tell that day
You're
walking
on
up
your
the
own.
street. I mean, they did not care
Yeah.
that there were police officers walking by. And I feel bad for the police officers. It's got to be,
it's a hard job.
they're told to stand down. And that was the day in the middle of the day that there weren't the protests and the riots that ended
Yeah.
up going up into Kensington and was the reason that buildings were literally burnt to the ground. And they were told to stand down. And you were there that night, right? You had the protest.
We had a neighbor who thought one of their grandsons was trapped in a building. It was for something different, but we were told that he was locked inside of a quick stop, and they set the quick stop on fire. They ended up burning down the two buildings next to it. But it was complete chaos down there. Like, we saw cops surrounded by 20 to 15 or 15 to 20 people. We saw multiple fights. We saw ambulances up and down Kensington Avenue, buildings on fire that went all through the night. We heard the dynamite going off for the next few weeks, obviously, but more so the first few nights. Like, it didn't end. Like, it was just the first 3 nights you just heard nonstop. And this is when they're blowing up the ATMs with the half sticks of dynamite. But we just heard that consistently, just loud booms throughout the entire neighborhood, and it's terrifying for a lot of the local people, obviously.
No, and I even heard the ATM explosions in my neighborhood. But again, I'll say one more time, I would not have thought I was in the United States when I walked that mile. And again, I've been to Kensington before. I've been to Kensington with you when we did a cleanup.
Yep.
But I never walked.
That was also early in the afternoon before all the fun kicks off.
Exactly. And so I've never, walked the full mile and really understood that. So we're going to take another quick break. You're listening to Republican Zone on USULA Radio. And if we ever go up.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Welcome back. You're listening to Republican Zone on USULA Radio. I am Drew Murray, the host, and I'm here with my friend Mark McPhelin. We're talking about Kensington and safe injection sites, sometimes called harm reduction sites. And, specifically we're talking about a rally that we attended in Kensington last week or 2 weeks ago.
In protest of everything that was going on, obviously, over the last few months in Kensington.
Yes, yeah. So, it was kind of a little bit of everything. And it was interesting, and we talked about Larry Krasner coming. And I was surprised to see him there. And again, I give him credit for it. But it was interesting, and I will say, I'm a Republican, Mark's a Republican. I disagree with pretty much everything that Larry Krasner does.
Yeah.
But and what he says, but I still couldn't believe he said this. And I'm anyone who listens to my radio show, anybody who talks to me, I'm not a huge fan of our president, but in the middle of his speech, he pointed to a guy who had a Make America Great cap on and a Trump 2020 banner.
Yeah.
And he pointed to him.
Who was a heckler, by the way.
Yeah. But he pointed to him and said, what you see in Kensington, what you're seeing with the opioid crisis across the country is a direct result of President Trump. Maybe not verbatim. I couldn't believe he said it. Because Kensington has nothing to do with President Trump and his presidency. Kensington, President Trump's only been president for 3.5 years.
And Kensington's been Kensington for 40 years.
Yeah.
More so the last 5 years, given the opioid epidemic. But
exactly. Well, the opioid epidemic absolutely can be traced back at least 5 years.
Yeah.
So, a lot of people are to blame. And maybe Trump's not helping, but he sure is not to blame. I just couldn't believe he said that. And it's funny. When he said it, I was actually filming it.
Yeah.
I never do Facebook Live, but I did Facebook Live for his part of the speech and maybe for David O's speech as well. And I just, and I just commented. I'm like, he just blamed President Trump for Kensington and the opioid crisis. And I've never gotten so many responses on my Facebook post than when that video went up.
Well, you heard, again, Angel Cruz blame everybody else, and then Krasner came in and blamed Trump, and then he blamed the homelessness on an industrial park from 60 years ago. So at no point did they address any of the actual issues at all.
Sure.
And again, just went to finger pointing.
And did they offer any solutions other than Larry Krasner and he wrote an I believe an op-ed that day in favor of safe injection sites. Other than safe injection sites, have they ever offered any other solution? I mean, and the thing is, and we'll talk about it a little bit. The Civic Association, the RCO doesn't want it, and if an RCO doesn't want something that is not as of right.
Yeah. I mean,
the city doesn't allow it, except in this case, they were going to allow it.
Because there's obviously bigger implications in this. There's more money tied in. And if you go through, Safe House has ties to multiple other states. They want multiple sites. This is an actual business, not a nonprofit business, even though people are confusing it for what it is. I do believe the harm reductionist community is for, actually helping people. However, what they're trying to push in the community isn't for that. It is for for money, for profit. And I think that's the biggest thing with the community is that.
So you really believe that? Like there are
100%.
harm reductionists absolutely who are there.
Who actually believe in what they're doing.
Who believe in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Who believe in,
Yes.
in a safe injection site. But you feel Safe House as a company is
Yes.
looking at profits.
100%.
Okay.
If you go by the numbers and you go by, when I started all this, I started talking to anyone that was proposing injection sites and people in their area. I've talked to reporters. I've talked to either people that were running, have run, or were elected officials in Seattle, Portland, Texas, New York, Denver. Reached out to all of them. I reached out to people in Melbourne, Australia. I reached out to people in Canada because I wanted to be as informed as I could about all this. And they'll all give you the same things. Basically that, they're all struggling in the community now, especially directly around it, because most of them are in a state of emergency. If you go to Canada and Melbourne, they'll all tell you that the people in the neighborhoods around it do not want this and they want it gone. Melbourne just posted something last week about how they're making tons of money off the injection sites. And what we have discussed through multiple people that I talked to is that they're creating a new market as far as harm reduction because the Narcan's gone through the roof. And then you have you're basically starting a whole new market when you lost all the money from the people that are bringing in the heroin, which was technically the cartel, is the biggest thing with who actually brings the heroin into Philadelphia is directly related to the cartel. So when you're saying that, you're looking at basically people are getting cut out and they want their cut. And that's where if you're around it enough and you see enough of it, you can start to see where people are looking for a more a money aspect as opposed to, because if you listen to what they tell you, they're telling you they're all about the people, yet they didn't show up in the pandemic, and they're telling you they're all about basically starting these to prevent opiate deaths, but they've never seen any actual evidence of it. And then when you talk to people that have actually done the research on it, they're going to tell you the crime's down all around the area, when if you go look at any of the statistics, it's way up.
Sure.
So there's such a false narrative that they're creating. And again, the people that I've talked to that are from the different magazines that'll tell you basically that there's, so I'll go back to this. They told us that there was 90% of Kensington that wanted an injection site. That poll was done out of 435 people. So out of 435 people, you got 90% of that, yet there's 20,000 people in the area.
And how did they collect the data?
There's a research company out of so it's done by by Drexel, formed a study with the University of San Diego, and they walked down the street and they took, from what they had told us, actual homeowners and business people in the area. Now, we don't actually know that because they won't give out any of the proof, and I've actually reached out to them to see who they addressed and see who they talked to. But again, when you come to the Civic Association, most of the people will tell you flat out they don't want it. Most of the people in the area will tell you flat out they don't want it.
I will tell you, there's no way there's 90%.
No, not even close. Even the guy that wrote that backed off of it the second I mentioned it and said I had nothing to do with that. My editor put it in there.
I've gone to Harrogate Civic Association, and we talked about safe injection sites. And not that there's a direct correlation between those who live in the community and those who are involved in the Civic Association, but if you told me 60%, at least it would be believable. Even 70%, 90%, no way. Not when I spoke at these events, every single person in that room, with the exception of a few, and this is actually, I'm saying Harrogate, I'm saying really around the city, the vast majority of people, I'd say 75%, were against safe injection sites because they were against it for their community. So that means they were, and many people would assume, hey, I can't be for it for somewhere else.
Yeah. So
unless I'm for it in my community.
The only people that I've really seen that have been for it are all harm reduction people in general. Like that's the only people that I've met that have a tie into this, because again, it's creating business for them. So that's why, I mean, like I said, when you go through, when you study all this stuff, and then you go into regardless, I have to bring him up because he's the one that backed Safe House, is George Soros. He's not doing it in a small market. He's never going to do that. So there has to be a bigger plan. And then, like I said, when you're talking to people from other states that are all trying to put these, injection sites in, there's definitely a bigger picture, and it's, where it actually ties into and who's running all of it. So I just can't see that this is all for the people. If it's all for the people, then you only put in one of them. You don't put in 18 of them.
Well, even, they Safe House even talked about coming to the community, talking to the community about, how it's going to work and how it's going to affect them. When it looked like to them that it wasn't going to happen in Kensington overnight, or it didn't happen overnight, but it was announced overnight, out of the blue, we're opening in South Philadelphia. And we're opening, I think it was a week even. And there was not a single community meeting.
No.
There was not a single...
Nothing was addressed.
Nothing was done. And they say a variance, and coming from an RCO, a civic association, you can't dig a hole in the city of Philadelphia without going to the RCO.
Correct.
If you need a variance and you're not doing something as of right. Even when you're doing something as of right, you normally have to go to the community. So, their argument was this was a medical center, and these sites are not illegal, and there's some validity to that. But you can't tell me that a safe injection site shouldn't require some level of a variance from the ZBA, and which means they should have been forced to come to the community, which means the mayor, as soon as they announced that it was going to be opening, although he already knew, should have said, no, we're not doing this. The city council people, and they finally came out, Kenyatta Johnson finally came out. He during the campaign cycle, he never said he was against safe injection sites. And I'm still not sure if he has said he's against and opposed to safe injection sites. He says, I'm opposed to the way this happened and how this was done. But I don't think he said he's opposed to actual safe injection sites.
And I don't think he has either. So going back to that, there's so many different things that should have been handled. Obviously, you are bringing an unproven kind of element to a neighborhood, so that the police should have been addressed. Schools should have been addressed. There was never an economic impact survey taken to decide how this is going to impact local stores and restaurants and bars when you're adding something that's so foreign into a neighborhood. There was never a proper health plan put in place. There was never any secondary measures put in place. And we both sat there and listened to City Hall at, when they did the depositions and they brought up Farley. He flat out said there is no, they know that it's not a cure to this. This is just a stopgap program. Mm-hmm. They also know that they can't provide health care for everybody in there. So how do you run this and try and get people into treatment when you can't provide the health care for them? It's the whole system's flawed from start to finish. And then you throw in on top of that the fact that they just rubbed it in your face by trying to throw it in your neighborhood and didn't tell you. I mean, there's so many different things that they just handled poorly.
And city council members did go to, I think, Toronto and looked at the safe injection sites there and came back with the knowledge that the businesses and the surrounding community
were devastated.
That they didn't want it. And that's the message that I've always heard about safe injection sites. Well, people are always scared. And I think Governor Rendell actually talked during the press conference for Safe House, and he said, when we did needle exchanges the first time, everyone was so scared that this was going to create, more drugs in the community, and it never happened. And it's the same with safe injection sites. And Mark Squilla actually responded in the news conference. Again, he never said he was opposed to safe injection sites during the campaign cycle. Yeah. But he came back. He said we went to Toronto, and the businesses said their businesses were crushed.
Yes.
And the people in the community says it was horrible for the community. As Governor Rendell, who I actually like, I think he was a great mayor and a good governor, is sitting there saying that it does not do any harm to the community.
So my question is this for Rendell, as a guy who's a former district attorney, how do you turn your back on the entire community by legalizing heroin?
Absolutely, I agree. And Larry Krasner's op-ed, I wrote something on Facebook. How does the top prosecutor of a municipality sit there and condone the use of an illegal drug?
Yes.
He was endorsing the safe injection site. At a minimum, at least pretend you're trying to be a district attorney and just stay out of it. Even if you in your heart, someone like Larry Krasner agrees with safe injection sites, he should never be promoting the illegal use of a drug.
You would think, but Philly, Kensington.
He's he's a unique district attorney. That's for sure. So we're gonna take one more break. You're listening to the Republican Zone on USLA Radio. We'll be back in a minute.
Our hearts are made stronger by how we treat others.
Put her there.
The light you share can impact those around you, but so can the darkness.
Later, twerps! Did Pete saying mean things bother ya?
So when you reach out to another person, take a moment to consider how they will feel and let your heart be the key to making a difference. Because of you, someone's entire day, year, or even life can change.
In every heart, there's hope.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Republican Zone on USLA Radio. My name is Drew Murray, the host, and I'm here with my friend Mark McPhelin, and we're going to continue our conversation on safe injection sites. And one thing I want to get into, and it's something that people who are in favor of safe injection sites or harm reduction sites, they always ask me one question. Drew, have you ever read any of the studies about safe injection sites? There has never been a death inside a safe injection site anywhere in the world. And my answer absolutely always is yes. I've actually read every study that I could find. I think there were about 4 or 5 that I've read, and they're right. No one has ever died inside a safe injection site.
Not entirely true,
But
it's never been proven that
Okay.
no one's died in there.
But what the study never addresses, when you dig a little deeper, is people have overdosed and they've been administered Narcan.
Yeah.
That may not have brought them back immediately, so they do go to a hospital. There's no data showing, okay, did the person die en route to the hospital?
Correct.
Did the person die at the hospital? So their statement that no one has ever died, if you die as a result of a safe injection site, then that's the same as dying inside the safe injection site. So the study, it's skewed. And it is always, and these studies, I will say, are always written by people who are in favor of harm reduction sites. I couldn't
Correct.
find a study that was done by someone who was opposed, or even an unbiased.
That's what I was going to say. That's what I would prefer that more so.
Exactly.
So when you go through the statistics, and you got to remember that when you're ODing, you are dying. And they're pumping you full, whether it's 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, how many ever times they need to do it. They're going to make sure that you're walking out of that door one way or the other. However, you might die the second you walk out of that door, and they don't address that. They don't tell you that 90% of the people that leave there don't go to the hospital. Now, first of all, if you are administered Narcan, you need medical attention. They'll never address that. They'll never put any facts like that out there. They'll never put any studies out there about that.
So that's something I didn't even realize. So if you are administered Narcan,
Yeah.
you should go to the hospital.
100%. There's not even a question about
And
that.
is the protocol at safe injection sites if they do administer
They
Narcan?
don't even get you a hospital, or they don't even get you an ambulance. You're allowed to walk out of there under your own recognizance, walk outside. And the study is that 90% of the people that are Narcan do not seek medical attention. So how many of them are dead?
Sure. And the data is not going to show that.
Yep.
Even more important to me, that is obviously not in any of these studies, and I've looked, and again, yes, I have read them, and I always tell people that. How many people have walked into a safe injection site and then within 6 months, a year, 18 months, whatever the time period is, are clean and sober after those 6,
0,
12, 18 months? Because what someone will always tell you, and again, I most of the people who are in favor of harm reduction sites are their heart is in the right place.
Yes.
But if they're not showing any data that people are getting better, then why have them? If they're, a harm reductionist will say, we save them today, so they can live to tomorrow, so we can help them, so we can get them into a program. Well, no one who goes into a safe injection site is required to go into any type of program.
Yes.
And there is no data showing that anyone who goes into a safe injection site is clean and sober 6 months, 12 months, 18 months in the future. And why is that? I mean, you said it, because probably that answer is 0.
Well, here's
or not 0. It's a very low percentage, we'll say.
They have it marked at 2%. That's what they keep pushing, is the 2%. That's fine. I'm just going by, in 6 months you're not going to be over heroin addiction. That's just it's obviously it would be a rarity if you did. So here's the thing, right? When you get in the safe house, they talk about the non-discrimination policy, which means you're not allowed to offer medical attention. You're not allowed to tell them they're an addict. And when you read their guidelines for it, and that's what I had touched on with Farley, is that he's telling people that they're trying to get people into rehab or therapy or treatment or whatever. They're not allowed to offer treatment. If you go to the one in Vancouver, they're not allowed to have any kind of medical information whatsoever in there, because it goes against discrimination. Because basically, if you see that, then they're basically saying, here, you're an addict. This is what you need to be doing. So when you go into the non-discrimination policy, a pregnant woman can inject. A kid can inject. They're not allowed to tell you, you can bring your son and daughter in there, and they can watch you sit there, and repeatedly inject yourself with heroin. And that's their non-discrimination policy, where they have to just let you do that. So from that perspective, from a societal perspective, is that something you want to introduce to your community? To me, it's always going to be undoubtedly no. The fact that a little kid can sit there with his mom, who was pregnant, and would have to watch that, obviously, it's a huge red flag for me. But then the bigger thing is that you're sitting here saying that, you're pushing treatment on people, but you are not. You're not allowed to. They're allowed to take your, some medical facts about you. That's about it. And then once you walk out of that door, you're on your own again. So here's the thing: is that how many people are going to sit there all day and shoot up, and not walk back out in the community and shoot up? Because at some point, those hours close up. What are they going to do for the next 19 hours out of the day?
Sure. Yeah, because they're not open 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I think the safe house.
It's 5. Is
Yeah,
it 5 hours?
I was going to say I thought it was going to be 8. The one in South Philly I thought was
Okay.
8, but you might be right. It might even be less.
I think it is just for whatever. But even if it's 8, I mean that's still you have 16 hours out of the day. What are you going to do?
An addict is not only injecting 8 hours a day.
No. Like we see waves. Like when we had talked about leaving the rally, the one thing that we know in the neighborhood is once, it comes like 5, 6 o'clock. That's when people are starting to come down from their high, and that's when it becomes a little bit more aggressive in the neighborhood because they're, they might need more money or they might be looking for more money, and the crime rate goes up in that time frame. And then later on the night, people are shooting back up again, and they're disappearing basically. But during those those stretch hours around dinner time, it becomes a lot more, aggressive down there, and it's noticeable. Like you see it right on the streets, so it's not like you can't confuse it. But those extra hours out of the day, what are they doing? Because they stay by the injection site in Kensington. They walk through, Port Richmond, Fishtown, scrapping. They go through people's cars. They go through. They break into people's, trucks and cars, and they steal what they can. They come back, they scrap it, and then they have their their fix for the day. I mean, that's the thing is that you're only having a small sample size of what they can actually do. So they might keep somebody, alive for 6 hours, 6 to 8 hours out of the day, but then you can't account for the crime or, them ODing later in the day. So there's all that time that the neighborhood just has to deal with all of that.
Oh, absolutely. And going back to the study, if they're not treating people and they're not saving people,
Yeah.
then they're having a harmful effect. Because again, you are injecting your body with a poison,
Yep.
and you are eventually going to die from that poison. So if the rate of helping people get off the cycle of addiction to break that cycle is 2%, how many people are dying because you're normalizing and enabling that drug use? And we don't know this answer because we don't have a safe injection site anywhere in the country. But I'd be interested to hear what it's like in Toronto, what it's like in Australia, and in these locations
State of emergency, man.
that have had it, that have had these, and the fact that no study has come out and shown anything better than the 2%,
Yeah.
tells you that they're not harm reduction sites.
Nah, they're just
They're temporary harm reduction sites.
So here's my thing. This is why I said it's money earlier, right? If they keep everybody alive and they keep them on heroin, they keep that cycle going. They keep the money coming in because they have to keep the injection site open. They're Narcaning, X amount of people a day. That's more money coming in from them. They get more federal grants. And again, if they're not dying but they're still addicted, that just opens up floodgates for more and more money for them, more and more opportunity to open up more and more sites. Now you have more addicted people, and no one's on recovery. No one's getting that treatment. You're just creating a market.
And you said it before, Kensington, it's almost an open air safe injection site because
it is.
How many people are carrying? And I'm saying this is a good thing. I think it's good that there are people, that there are activists out there who do carry Narcan. So I'm by no means saying that's a bad thing, but there are people out there helping these people not die. So it's already safe injection site. I've read stories where the drug dealers themselves are carrying Narcan. And if they see someone
because they want their customer,
because they're going to lose a customer. If they don't save the person, they're going to lose a customer. And look, I would rather the drug dealer save a person with Narcan. I'd
rather them not deal the drugs.
Exactly. I'd rather them just completely not deal the drugs. But yeah, so it's not that I'm not empathetic to the people who are in this cycle of addiction, but it's just enabling them is just not the answer. I mean, I can't say that enough. Enabling them is not the answer. Normalizing drug use is not the answer.
But that's what they're pushing for.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, you can bring in your children to this.
It's crazy.
Now, if your child sits there and watches you do drugs in a safe injection site, you're telling me that that child's future is not going to be also abusing drugs.
I don't see how you can't, because you're already implementing that in their head from such a young age. Like, again, you see it enough on the streets of Kensington. And that's my biggest point with that is that we're trying to prevent that. We're trying to get it, to go away from that to kind of protect the neighborhood itself, because most of the people in Kensington aren't residents of Kensington. So the thing is that, they have all this outside exposure. We have people from California, from Virginia, from all over the country that are coming here for the injection sites. It's bringing more. There's two things that are constant in Kensington. The purest heroin in the area, as if I'm not mistaken, it's in the country, is Kensington. The open air market and the idea of safe house is bringing more and more people to the area. So if you want to keep introducing this to your communities and you keep opening these up, it's going to bring more and more people to the area just to shoot up. So you're bringing people that value their lifestyle over an actual life, for the most part. I know it's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. You know, that's what their priorities are, is their quick high, their quick fix. But that also comes as a price to the neighborhood, and that's what we see every single day, and that's why we are so strongly opposed to it.
Sure, and any elected official in the city of Philadelphia, and specifically, you know, the city of Philadelphia itself, the municipality, they really should be ashamed of themselves. It is deplorable. Again, I have to say it again. I was shocked on what I saw during that mile walk.
Yeah.
As a person who has been to Kensington before, but I've never walked that mile. You know, I've probably driven over.
It's inhumane.
And the quality of living for not only, and look, we need to help those who are addicted.
Yeah.
We also need to help those who live in the community whose quality of living is horrendous, whose children, again, as you said, are watching this and thinking that it is somewhat normal. I mean, I would never bring my daughters, obviously, to walk that mile. I'm
glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I would never do that. So why did the elected officials allow it to get to this point where there are children who are walking that mile?
So very quickly, I want to touch on this, and this is the one thing. I know we're about to be out of time,
Sure.
but the one thing that we always talked about is that if you were so gung-ho about this, but you're not from that neighborhood, then please move to the neighborhood
Sure.
and come to Safe House and keep your thing up and running. But they're not going to. The city council members are not going to walk their kids up and down the McPherson Park. That's never going to happen. So why do you keep telling everyone this is what we need when you're not going to be there, standing there to pick up all the pieces at the end of the day?
You're right, and the rest of there are many people telling Kensington residents what they need.
Yep.
And
That's
it's
too
not
many
what,
people.
It's absolutely not what they want.
And
So-
none of them are from the neighborhood.
Absolutely. So, Mark, thank you. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for everyone
having
who's
me.
listening. You're listening to the Republican Zone on USLA Radio. Have a great day.